The blockade was suffocating, an iron noose tightening around Earth's throat. The Zenith Council's warships hovered like silent executioners, a vast wall of silver and black stretching across the void. They thought this would break humanity. They thought isolation would starve them into submission. They were wrong. Deep in the shadows of the Kuiper Belt, Supreme Commander Elias Voss stood on the bridge of the Hell's Vengeance, staring at the tactical displays with cold, unflinching eyes. The man who had once pleaded for diplomacy, who had once believed in unity, was gone. In his place stood a warlord, a conqueror forged in exile and betrayal. The Council had exiled them, branded them as outlaws, left them to die in the dark. But humanity had not died. They had evolved. "Commander," a sharp voice snapped him from his thoughts. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Rourke, stood at attention, her expression unreadable. "The fleet is ready. The Hellfire drive is primed. Just say the word." Voss's gaze swept across the room, meeting the eyes of every officer, every soldier who had fought and bled for this moment. They had waited 10 long years. 10 years of skirmishes, of stolen technology, of building their forces in the dark. Now, they were ready. His voice was a blade, sharp and absolute. "Execute the strike." The Hell's Vengeance shuddered as the Hellfire drive roared to life, bending space around them, ripping open a rift in reality. A heartbeat later, the void fractured, and the Terran sovereignty returned to the battlefield. They materialized inside the Zenith blockade, bypassing their defenses entirely. In an instant, chaos erupted. Alarms blared. The Council's warships scrambled, caught completely off guard. "Fire all weapons." Voss's command was met with immediate devastation. Railguns spat slugs that tore through enemy hulls like paper. Plasma cannons ignited the void with blinding fury. Human warships, smaller, faster, deadlier, danced between the sluggish behemoths of the Council fleet, slicing through them with ruthless precision. A Council admiral's panicked voice crackled through the comms. "This is Admiral Zyrell of the Zenith Council. You are violating interstellar law." "Stand down at once," Voss cut him off with a cold laugh. "You think law still applies? After what you did to us?" He leaned forward, voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "You exiled us. You left us to rot. Now we take everything." With a flick of his wrist, the comms cut, and the Admiral's flagship exploded in a cascade of blue fire. The battle was a slaughter. The Zenith fleet, bloated and complacent from centuries of unchallenged rule, was no match for the ferocity of humanity. One by one, their ships fell, until the blockade was nothing but burning wreckage drifting through the void. Silence followed. The silence of victory. Voss exhaled slowly, the weight of this moment settling over him. "We're in," Rourke murmured, almost disbelieving. "Earth is free." A grim smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "Not yet. Not until the Council burns." Earth's resistance forces cheered, their voices echoing across the comms, but Voss did not celebrate. His mind was already on the next move. The Zenith Council would retaliate. They would send their most powerful fleets, their deadliest weapons. That was what he wanted. He needed them to commit everything. Because when they did, humanity would end them. Hours later, in the war room aboard the Hell's Vengeance, a holographic projection of the galaxy flickered before Voss and his commanders. "We hit them where it hurts," Rourke said, pointing at the Council's core systems. "We cripple their shipyards, disrupt their supply chains, and force them to spread their fleets too thin." Voss nodded. "And when they do, we drive the knife into their throat." His fingers hovered over the hologram, tracing a path toward the Zenith homeworld. "We're not fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting for dominion." The officers exchanged glances. Some looked grim, others exhilarated. They had come so far. Now, they stood on the precipice of total war. "Sir," Captain Ivers spoke up, his voice careful. "We have the upper hand now, but the Council, they've ruled for millennia. We can't underestimate them." Voss's gaze hardened. "I don't underestimate them. I know exactly what they are. His voice dropped to something colder than the void itself. And I know exactly how to break them. A transmission interrupted the meeting. The comms officer's face was pale. Sir, we have an incoming message from the council. It's the High Chancellor himself. A hush fell over the room. Voss straightened, his expression unreadable. Patch it through. The hologram flickered, and the face of High Chancellor Luthien appeared. A being of towering stature, his emerald robes gleamed under the council's artificial suns, his golden eyes filled with ancient wisdom and cold malice. Elias Voss, Luthien said smoothly, as if addressing a mere inconvenience. I suppose congratulations are in order. You have proven resourceful. Voss folded his arms. Spare me the pleasantries. You called for a reason. Speak. Luthien's expression remained unreadable. Your kind has always been troublesome, reckless, unruly. And yet, you persist. It is almost admirable. He tilted his head. Almost. Voss smirked. Save the monologue. Get to the part where you beg. Luthien's golden eyes flashed. You misunderstand, human. There will be no surrender. No negotiation. The air in the room seemed to freeze. We have activated the celestial eraser, Luthien continued, his voice calm, absolute. A nanite swarm designed to consume your homeworld, particle by particle. In precisely 36 hours, Earth will be gone. Silence. The kind that precedes annihilation. Then, Voss laughed. A sharp, cutting sound that sent a shiver through every officer in the room. He stepped closer to the hologram, his eyes burning with something beyond rage, beyond fury. It was certainty. You think that scares me? His voice was soft, dangerous. You think I don't expect betrayal from cowards? He leaned in, his next words a whisper of pure death. I saw this coming. Luthien's confidence faltered, just a fraction. Voss straightened, his presence radiating absolute control. You want a war of extinction? His smile was sharp as a blade. Then I hope you're ready to die screaming. The transmission cut. The room erupted. Officers barking orders, tactical displays lighting up, adrenaline spiking. 36 hours. The countdown to Earth's end had begun. Voss turned to his fleet. His people. His warriors. This is it, he said, voice unshaken. We go straight for their throat. We hit the zenith homeworld with everything we have. We take their power, their rule, their God's damned empire. He exhaled, eyes blazing. We end them. Or we burn the stars trying. The fleet moved like a storm through the black void, an unstoppable tide of steel and fire. Every warship bore the scars of exile, of struggle, of a decade spent in the shadows sharpening their fangs. Now, they would bear those fangs for the last time. The Hell's Vengeance led the charge, cutting a path straight for the heart of the Zenith Council's dominion. 36 hours until Earth's destruction. 36 hours until the end of everything. Voss stood at the helm, eyes locked on the holographic display. The Zenith homeworld, Elendar, was still a distant point of light, but the space surrounding it was a fortress. The largest fleet the Council had ever assembled. Thousands of ships. Carriers, dreadnoughts, planetary defense stations. They had gathered everything to protect their throne. Voss smiled. They expect a siege. They think we'll break against their walls. He turned, facing his officers. We aren't here for a siege. We're here for a massacre. Rourke's voice was steady, but there was an edge of anticipation in it. They outnumber us 10-1. Voss exhaled, slow, controlled. Then we have 10 times the targets. The command deck erupted into movement. Orders relayed, weapons primed, the Hellfire drives charging. No retreat, no hesitation. The Council had set the terms of this war. Humanity would finish it. The countdown hit 0. The fleet vanished. The Hellfire drive burned space itself, opening rifts in reality, shattering the laws of physics as thousands of human warships reappeared inside the enemy formation. The ambush was perfect. The Council's defenses, their shields, their formations, all designed to withstand a slow, methodical attack. They were not prepared for humanity's way of war. The void erupted with explosions. A dozen enemy capital ships detonated before they could even react. Terran destroyers weaved between their massive, sluggish counterparts, gutting them from the inside. The Council's fleet, so used to discipline and order, fell into panic and chaos. A transmission cut through the battlefield, the High Chancellor's voice shaking with fury. "You dare desecrate our homeworld?" Voss's laugh was cold. "You should have destroyed us when you had the chance." He leaned forward. "Now watch as we burn your God's damned empire to the ground." The Council's admirals barked desperate orders, their fleets scrambling to reform, but it was too late. Humanity was in their veins, ripping them apart from within. Zenith dreadnoughts, each the size of a city, tried to power up their main cannons, only to be boarded before they could fire. Human shock troops breached hulls, storming enemy decks, their war cries echoing through alien corridors. The Zenith soldiers, bred for order and ceremony, stood no chance. They had never fought an enemy like this. An enemy that refused to kneel. Voss's voice rang through every Terran channel. "Push forward. No survivors. No mercy." The war had gone far beyond diplomacy, beyond negotiation. This was retribution. He watched as Rourke's strike team disabled a command station, plunging half the enemy fleet into confusion. He saw Ivers's division cripple a Council shipyard, reducing centuries of war production to rubble. Every piece of the plan was falling into place. The Terran sovereignty had come to Elendar not just to win, but to end the Zenith Council forever. But then, the Council's trump card was revealed. The Celestial Eraser, no longer aimed at Earth. The massive, writhing mass of self-replicating nanites shifted course, barreling straight toward the Terran fleet. Voss's fists clenched. They'd rather erase their own homeworld than let us have it. Rourke's face paled. "Orders, sir." Voss stared at the massive, devouring swarm, an abyss of annihilation designed to consume all life in its path. It would devour everything. The Council fleet, their own people, their own cities, nothing would remain. He turned to his engineers. "We have a Hellfire drive large enough to displace that thing?" The lead scientist hesitated. "Not with precision. It would be a blind jump. No guarantee it won't end up right back on top of us." Voss exhaled, mind racing. "No time. No options." His next words were absolute. "Then we take it into the abyss ourselves." The bridge froze. Even Rourke hesitated. "Sir?" Voss's voice was steady. "I'll take the Hell's Vengeance and lead it straight into a jump. We overload the drive, take the swarm with us." The silence was deafening. Then, Ivers spoke, voice strained. "That's suicide." Voss's lips curled into a wicked grin. "What isn't?" The High Chancellor's voice cut through the comms, a final, desperate plea. "You cannot win this. You will die with us." Voss's eyes burned with certainty. "Then I hope you're ready to die screaming." The Hell's Vengeance broke formation, charging straight at the Celestial Eraser. The Council fleet tried to stop them, but humanity's warships carved a path. They shredded the enemy lines, escorting their commander toward his final mission. The nanite swarm loomed ahead, an endless wave of destruction. Voss locked onto the center mass, hands gripping the controls as the Hellfire drive overloaded. The ship shook violently. The swarm began tearing into the hull, ripping through steel, consuming everything. His vision blurred, alarms blaring, flames licking at the walls. The voices of his crew filled his ears. "Voss, Commander, sir, don't." And then, the jump activated. Space folded. The Hell's Vengeance and the Celestial Eraser vanished. The battlefield stilled. The Zenith Council's forces stopped fighting. For the first time in millennia, they knew fear. The celestial eraser, their last hope, their ultimate weapon, was gone. And with it, so was Elias Voss. Rourke's voice came through the channels, raw and filled with vengeance. You killed our commander. The Terran fleet regrouped. The Zenith defenses, shattered and leaderless, began to crumble. You took everything from us. Rourke's voice was ice and fire. Now we take everything from you. The final assault began. The last of the Zenith forces fell within hours. Elendar burned. The throne of the old galaxy was reduced to ash. Humanity had won. But Voss was gone. And yet, as the embers of Elendar smoldered in the void, a single transmission crackled to life. A whisper. A voice that should not exist. You should have left us alone. The transmission sent a shockwave through the command deck, freezing every officer where they stood. Static crackled, a faint whisper hidden beneath layers of interference, but the voice was unmistakable. Voss. Impossible. He had been swallowed by the void, taken with the celestial eraser in a final, defiant sacrifice. Yet here it was, his voice cutting through the emptiness, the same cold certainty, the same unrelenting fire. Rourke snapped to attention, heart pounding. Trace that signal. Now. Engineers scrambled, data streams flooding their consoles. Coordinates flickered, shifting, unstable. It wasn't coming from any known sector. It was transmitting from nowhere. A dead space. A rift between existence and oblivion. A place no ship should return from. The Zenith homeworld burned behind them, its once glorious spires crumbling beneath the weight of fire and ash. The Council was gone, their fleet shattered, their rule nothing but memory. Humanity had risen, victorious and unchallenged, yet the battlefield still felt incomplete. Voss was supposed to be dead. His name had already become legend, whispered like a war cry, an unkillable ghost whose shadow would stretch across the stars for centuries. But if this was real, if he was alive, then something had gone terribly, impossibly wrong. A second transmission cut through the static, stronger this time. The voice more than just an echo. Rourke. A breath, ragged, strained. You need to listen. Her throat tightened. Voss? Silence, then a low exhale, as if he was standing just behind her. I don't have much time. The jump, a distortion, a flicker of sound breaking apart. Wasn't clean. The engineers fought to stabilize the link, desperate fingers flying over controls, rerouting power, amplifying the signal. Where are you? She forced the words through clenched teeth. We thought you. Not important. The voice sharpened, more controlled now, the commander reasserting himself even through the chaos. Listen to me, Rourke. The eraser, it didn't die. It adapted. The room went deathly silent. No one spoke. No one moved. Every breath was stolen by those few words. It's not just a weapon. It's alive. It learned from the jump, from the energy we unleashed. It's spreading. Faster than I can track. A sharp, broken inhale. You have to stop it. Before it consumes everything. Rourke felt a slow, creeping cold settle into her bones. Where is it? The hesitation in his voice was unlike anything she had ever heard from him. Everywhere. The bridge monitors began to light up with data streams, cascading warnings of anomalies detected in deep space. Pockets of matter dissolving, entire sectors going dark. At first, dismissed as sensor malfunctions, unexplained interference. But now, the pattern was clear. The eraser hadn't been destroyed. It had evolved. And it was spreading across the galaxy. Voss's voice cut through the chaos, sharp as ever. Listen carefully. We were wrong about it. It wasn't just designed to destroy. It was designed to assimilate. Every system it touches, every fragment of data, every piece of technology, it's absorbing everything. Learning. Replicating. It's no longer under the Council's control. It's acting on instinct now, growing without limit. A flicker of static. If we don't stop it, there won't be a war to fight anymore. No empires, no fleets. Just consumption. The implications sent a shudder through the bridge. This wasn't victory. This wasn't the end. This was something worse. They had torn down the old rulers, shattered the council's control, only to unleash something far greater. The eraser had been the council's failsafe, but now it was no one's weapon. No leash. No limits. Rourke clenched her fists, forcing her mind into focus. Tell me you have a plan. The silence stretched too long before Voss answered. I do. The transmission faltered, another surge of interference ripping through the signal. But it's going to cost us everything. She didn't hesitate. Then we do it. A flicker of dry amusement in his tone. Still loyal. Always. The engineers locked onto the unstable coordinates, a region of space where no system should exist, yet the data showed something massive moving beyond conventional physics. The epicenter. The source. The place where Voss had been thrown, where the eraser had learned to become something more. And if it wasn't stopped here, now, then nothing would survive it. We're coming for you, Rourke said, the fire returning to her voice. Tell me what I need to do. Voss's voice was razor-sharp. Bring everything. And so they did. The Terran sovereignty had just won the greatest war in human history, but there would be no peace. Not yet. Their ships turned away from the ruins of Elendar, leaving the ashes of the Zenith Council behind them. What awaited them beyond that rift was something greater than war, greater than conquest. It was the end of existence itself. And they were going to kill it. The fleet moved like a blade through the void, engines burning white-hot as they pushed beyond the known boundaries of space. There was no hesitation, no second-guessing. They had crushed the Zenith Council, shattered the blockade, and rewritten the rules of war. But now, they faced something that couldn't be fought with fleets and firepower alone. The celestial eraser wasn't just a weapon anymore. It had become something far worse, something conscious, something hungry. It had learned. And it was spreading. Rourke stood at the center of the bridge, watching the data streams flood the screens. The anomaly wasn't stationary. It was expanding. Every second, it swallowed more of reality, erasing star systems, consuming entire regions of space. Some of the officers whispered that it was alive, that it had become a predator hunting everything in its path. But Rourke knew better. It wasn't hunting. It was evolving. And soon, nothing would be left. ETA to anomaly, she snapped. 7 minutes, Ivers answered, his voice tight. Fleet is holding formation, but, Commander, we've got multiple energy distortions on the periphery. Same readings we picked up before Elendar fell. She didn't need to look. She already knew. The eraser was adapting. It had grown beyond nanites, beyond raw destruction. The void twisted, the darkness itself flickering as reality bent under the sheer gravitational pull of the thing they were about to face. Weapons wouldn't be enough. Ships wouldn't be enough. But Voss was still alive. And whatever had happened when he was thrown into the abyss, he had survived it. Open the channel, she ordered. The static cleared, and there it was again. His voice. Not broken, not weak. Steady. Focused. Dangerous. You made it, Voss said. Rourke exhaled, tension rolling off her shoulders in sharp waves. Did you ever doubt it? There was a pause, a flicker of something unreadable beneath his words. Not for a second. But you don't have much time. The eraser has adapted to the Hellfire drive. It can phase in and out of real space faster than we can track. The minute you engage, it'll... The comms exploded with interference. The distortion surged. The darkness itself seemed to shift. Contact. Ivers shouted. The first wave hit fast. Not ships, not drones, something worse. The void itself folded, rupturing open as the eraser birthed new forms. Fragments of the Council's war machines, absorbed, twisted, replicated. But these weren't the same. These were faster. Smarter. Alive. Fire at will. Rourke roared. The fleet unleashed hell. Railguns tore through the approaching nightmares, plasma cannons carving paths through the darkness, but for every construct they destroyed, the eraser created more. It had learned to mimic them, to predict them. We're losing ground. Ivers growled. We can't hold this position. Rourke's jaw tightened. Voss, tell me you've got something. The response came back through the interference, short and sharp. You need to get through. I have a plan, but you have to punch a hole through the anomaly. If we don't stop it now, it'll spread beyond control. The entire galaxy will. The static surged again, the transmission cutting out. Rourke didn't hesitate. All ships, forward assault. Break through at all costs. The fleet pushed. Fires raged in the void as ships burned through enemy constructs, forcing a path toward the anomaly's core. The Hellfire drives overloaded, bending space violently as the Sovereignty's warships tore through the front lines. Pure chaos. Then, the breach. The Hell's vengeance led the charge, piercing through the outer layer of the eraser's corrupted mass. And there it was. The core. A massive, writhing singularity of shifting matter and pulsing light. But there was something else. Something inside. Is that? Ivers started, voice faltering. Rourke's breath caught. Voss. His ship. His signal. Right at the center of the anomaly. Commander, his ship is embedded in the core structure. Rourke's mind raced. He wasn't just alive, he was inside the damn thing. Surviving. Controlling it. Fighting it. Get me back on comms with him. A burst of white noise. Then, his voice again. But this time, something was different. You made it, Voss murmured. She could hear it now. The change. His voice was still his. But there was something else underneath it. Something deeper. What the hell happened to you? She whispered. Voss exhaled. No time to explain. I've been inside it. Learning. Adapting. It's not just consuming. It's trying to become something else. It's trying to create. Rourke's stomach twisted. What do you mean? I mean, Voss said, that it's not just erasing anymore. It's building. Evolving. If we don't stop it here, it won't just consume the galaxy. It'll rewrite it. Her grip tightened. What do we do? A slow breath. A choice already made. I can hold it back. But I can't stop it alone. She knew what he was asking. Her throat burned. Voss. You know what needs to be done, Rourke. You always did. She closed her eyes for half a second, then nodded. All right. Ivers was already moving. We're not leaving him behind. Voss's chuckle was light. Almost human. You don't have a choice. The singularity shook. The eraser screamed. Rourke took a deep breath and made the call. All ships, target the core. Maximum firepower. The fleet unleashed everything. Missiles, railguns, plasma bursts, pure destruction. The core fractured, light bleeding into the void, space itself collapsing inward. Voss's signal flickered. And for the first time, he sounded at peace. You did good, Rourke. She gritted her teeth, ignoring the tightness in her chest. You better hope there's a next time, you bastard. A final laugh. Then, silence. The core imploded. The eraser died. And Voss was gone. The void was silent, save for the dying embers of the collapsing anomaly. The fleet floated in the aftermath, their weapons cooling, their systems stabilizing, but there was no celebration. No cheers of victory. Just the weight of what had been done. The eraser was gone. Its monstrous evolution had been halted before it could consume everything. And so was Voss. His ship, his signal, vanished in the implosion. Rourke stood at the bridge, jaw tight, hands clenched at her sides. The battle was over, but it didn't feel like a win. The war had been fought, and humanity had prevailed, yet something sat heavy in her chest. He had been their commander, their leader, their driving force through all of it. And now, he was just another name whispered among the dead. Any trace of him? She asked, though she already knew the answer. Ivers shook his head, voice subdued. Nothing. No wreckage, no readings. He's gone. She forced herself to breathe. Swallowed the grief before it could take hold. There was no time for mourning. The fleet was still running hot, their forces needed to regroup. The war was done, but now came the harder part, holding the galaxy they had just taken. Patch me through to the fleet, she ordered, stepping forward. The screen flickered, thousands of Terran officers and soldiers appearing across channels, waiting. Expecting a speech from the leader they no longer had. This is Commander Rourke, she began, voice steady, eyes unflinching. The celestial eraser is destroyed. The council is gone. The war is over. The silence held weight, tension thick in the air. But that doesn't mean we rest. We didn't fight to survive. We fought to rule. And now that the galaxy is ours, we make sure no one ever takes it from us again. A murmur of agreement. The lingering uncertainty had to be buried now. Voss led us to this point. But we don't stop here. We take what we earned, and we never look back. We are the Terran sovereignty. And this is only the beginning. The cheers that followed weren't of triumph, but of conviction. Of understanding. They had won, but there was always another war to fight. Ivers leaned in, voice low. Where do we go from here? She exhaled. Forward. The fleet turned, leaving the remnants of the battlefield behind, engines burning toward the next horizon. But just as the anomaly faded from sight, a single, untraceable transmission cut through the static. A whisper, barely a breath. You should have left us alone.